Hi, I'm David Pinski. I'm with Hitachi, and today I'm here to talk to you about who knows why the Republican-controlled Congress in the early 1930s, to react to the anyone? Well, the reason why I'm using this slide is because most of the stuff going on here is pretty exciting around tokens and ICOs and how we're going to reshape economies. But what I'm here to talk about is really a lot more boring to a lot of the attendees, which is why do businesses care about blockchain? How are they going to use it? And for that matter, what is a blockchain without a token? I've had people say, if you're not using a token, then you're not really blockchain. And of course, this is a little bit of semantics, of how you define a blockchain system. But what we're doing doesn't involve tokens. Because of course, with tokens, there's always the question of, I parked it somewhere, but where is my token really? In the business world, a lot of what is being done doesn't necessarily involve that sort of strict exchange of value between parties. Yes, you're exchanging information, you're exchanging something of value per se, but it's not something of value that's going to be tracked digitally. So what I want to encourage people to do is think about, from a business standpoint, things like stored procedures, your business logic, how you're storing data, the immutability of that data, and how can we solve those sorts of business problems using this type of technology? How can we apply either Hyperledger or other types of blockchain technologies to solve these problems? So the next question I have is, what is a blockchain that isn't particularly distributed? The other thing people talk a lot about is that blockchain involves lots and lots of companies, and part of its immutability comes from the fact that lots of people have the same set of data. Except a lot of the blockchains that we're working on actually involve very few participants, or in fact, in some cases, it's just within a single company. In governance cases, it might even just involve a regulator. Now, in a lot of the blockchain systems, you hear about sidechains adding on. So this is sort of the result, this picture is sort of the result of a lot of these blockchain systems where you have everything sort of lumped onto one central system that's trying to manage multiple business processes. And this is a model that will work for a lot of applications, but for a lot of businesses that want to keep stuff private or semi-private, they need to take a slightly different approach where they don't want a sidechain on a public ledger. They want a truly either private or semi-private network that they're either running themselves or with a group of companies to store their business data. And what that might look like is a little different. By the way, why the state of India just loves these motorcycle routines, I don't know. But I think this is a little bit more where we see the market headed from a business standpoint, which is you're going to have these groups of companies coming together, setting up these ledgers for a specific business purpose. So in the future, you're going to see companies, just like they have many, many data warehouses or many Oracle systems, you're going to have many, many different systems running on technologies like Hyperledger or Ethereum or descendant technologies. So a little bit why Hyperledger matters. I think Brian spoke really well to this a few minutes ago, but it matters because it provides an umbrella for a lot of these technologies to evolve, and they are very much evolving. So Brian talked a little bit about all these different projects that are going on. This is just a few of them. These are the ones that we're particularly interested in at Hitachi. We're mostly contributing to Fabric, but we're also following along with these other technologies, figuring out how we might integrate some of these other approaches, like Sawtooth, for example, because Hitachi is a big operating technologies company. We have use cases for it of our own. Another issue to keep in mind is this convergence. Actually, John just mentioned a few moments ago that he's agnostic, and so are we. I mean, right now we're making a big bet on Hyperledger because we think it's the best architecture for the kind of problems we're trying to solve. However, there is this growing convergence and sharing of technologies because a lot of these projects are open source. So you see stuff coming from Ethereum to Hyperledger and back, and concepts from Hyperledger and back to Ethereum. So what I'd like to encourage all of you to do is define your use case, then you pick up a platform. So whether or not Hyperledger or some other technology is the right platform should be defined by the use case and not vice versa. And there's lots of different use cases potentially out there. So of course the question is, show me the use cases. I have a slide coming up in a sec with an actual list. But when we talk about financial services, there's lots of governance use cases. There's lots of information that banks need to be immutable. They need to share with people. So here's some of those ideas, but everything from lifecycle management of critical infrastructure, things like aircraft parts that have to be tracked globally, regulatory filings, IoT command and control identity. There are just so many great use cases that this technology is the right technology to solve for. And just sort of in summary, that's Smoot, that's Hawley, that was the correct answer to the Ferris-Bueller question. Tariffs don't really work, and open source is the way to go. Thank you.